That's right. It's time for another exclusive film and video report. And if you were listening last week, I was talking about the new DVD release of 11 episodes of the long-lost series My Living Doll, starring Julie Newmar and Bob Cummings. And tonight we've got someone who's responsible for this DVD. Peter Greenwood is with us. Peter?
Hey, how are you?
Peter, tell us exactly your role in getting this lost footage to us, fans of the show.
What I am, I'm the licensing manager worldwide for Jack Shertock Television, which is the company that produced My Living Doll.
Okay.
Primarily, I do My Favorite Martian. That's our big hit show that takes up the lion's share of my work. But what happened was, just to give you a bit of background on this, I did a soundtrack album for My Favorite Martian quite some time ago. And in the process of preparing that, I was working with George Greeley, who was our composer.
Right.
And we'd go through the cues, the music cues from Martian, and every so often he'd stop and say, we use that on Doll as well. And I'm thinking, what's a doll? Because I'm from Australia, and I'd never seen My Living Doll.
Okay.
And I contacted our wonderful agency, William Morris, and I said, what's the story on My Living Doll? And they said, well, you own it. All right, well, where is it? We don't know. So at that point, about 20 phone calls later, I ended up with a lady called Ann Nelson, who'd been at CBS since the coming of the dinosaurs. And she told me what had happened was, CBS, when the show went off the air, it was with CBS for syndication for 5 years.
Right.
We shipped all of the original film elements in order to do the syndication as promised. And in the process of time, in the early 90s, there was an earthquake in Los Angeles. And the facility that was storing the doll negatives sprung a leak. And we lost all the Master 35s.
Oh, jeez.
But here's the thing. We still had, sub-16s floating around out there from the network affiliates. So I was able to rebuild the show using all of these sub-16s that were swiped and walked away back in the 60s.
Do we have now 26 episodes? Are they found, or are you still searching for them?
Still a little above 11. The problem is that I have close to the 26, but I have some of the episodes in absolutely horrifying condition. And, as you probably noted from the set, I'm very, very quality-minded. I don't want to release anything unless it's at a certain level of quality, just because it's just not worth it.
Right.
So, I don't need to be... it's already getting criticism or heat over just putting out 11. But believe me, if I'd have put out another 5 in the condition that they're in,
right,
the heat would have been even worse. And, the thing is that a lot of them have turned up.
They have?
Yeah, and literally about a month ago, a guy contacted us, and he claims to have 5. But he doesn't quite know where they are right now, which is a very common happenstance. Most of the guys who collected these films are older guys, and, they're getting a bit sort of long in the tooth, and it's very hard for them to get into their collections to find these things.
Right.
So, you have to have a modicum of patience when it comes to getting this material out.
Now that you've seen, because you'd said that you hadn't even seen the show before, are you a fan of My Living Doll?
Oh, absolutely. But, it's funny, when I started to watch them, I always loved Julie Newmar for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But she is so absolutely fantastic in the role of Rhoda. It's just mind-blowing that this thing ever got lost in the first place.
I know that it was up against Bonanza at the time.
It was up against Bonanza, and there were a lot of production problems too that I can't really go into that are slightly top secret.
Right.
It had a very strong audience. I mean, it's almost the Star Trek dilemma.
Right.
I don't know if you remember when Star Trek was canceled by NBC, they just started doing demographics. And the Nelson company came into NBC and they said, well, we just found a perfect skewing demographic show that you had on air. And they said, well, which one is it? Well, it's one you just canceled called Star Trek. It skews perfectly for 18 to 32 or whatever. So, I mean, I'm certain the show was successful. It's just not as successful as it needed to be in the larger picture.
Let me ask you something, because I know that the sales of a particular series, especially volume 1 of a series, often dictates whether we're going to get further volumes. Do you know? I mean, it's only been a few weeks that this has been out, but
I am desperate to put a second volume out. Believe me, as fast as I can do it, I'll put out a second volume. That's not something that I don't want to leave it stand.
Right.
I'm not going to leave it stand. I mean, literally every day I'm online. I'm looking everywhere for these shows. I spend a good 4 hours of every day, even the weekends, looking for my favorite Martian, my living doll. I'm totally dedicated to making sure that the second set is released and the series is completed.
You know, it was a show that for me was legendary because I only had 3 episodes on VHS.
Yeah, the bootleggers had only gotten to 3 of them, and it's good that they did that in a sense because at least it kept it alive.
That's true. That's true. Listen, that show, and as I said in that review, there are moments on that show, especially with Julie's performance, everything about it works. I mean,
she's using dance, she's using, she trained with Marcel Marceau.
Right.
I mean, her knowledge of mime is absolutely amazing. It's startling. So, I mean, this Julie Newmar is a very intellectual gal. She's absolutely gorgeous beyond belief. But there's a heck of a brain at work in there. I mean, you should see the notes. I've seen her production scripts, and the notes inside those scripts are absolutely amazing. I mean, she thought everything out. There was nothing in any way, ad-libbed in a very strong sense because she spent a lot of time trying to get to the heart of the character.
What is her reaction to this DVD? You've obviously probably spoken to her fairly recently. Is she thrilled?
She's very happy. I mean, because she always thought, as everybody did, that it would never, ever happen. It was considered a lost show. People would, I read on the boards when I was preparing this thing, I'd see people saying, yeah, this is never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. I posted on a few boards here and there. And they'd always say, yeah, right, we don't believe you.
No.
And I'm like, I don't know what I have to do to convince you guys I'm breaking every rule possible in doing this, in the sense that commercially this is insane. You don't put this much money into a show that's this old and this unknown.
Well, listen, Peter, I'm going to tell you, I checked out some of those comments. Even when the cover art was released, I saw comments from people saying, it's still not going to happen.
I know. It's like, what do I have to do? Show up on your doorstep with it? Unbelievable. But, the thing is that I don't blame them because there's been a lot of promises that studios have made through the years about certain releases.
Right.
And the thing you have to understand is while certainly we're a Shurtok company as a studio, I'm a fan too.
Right.
I'm not going to disappoint my fellow fans. That's why there's a ton of extras on this. I'm galled by, a DVD that has no extras. The point is that I found everything I could possibly find in terms of extras material. I do have a lot more stills.
Oh, yeah,
I held some back for Volume 2. Because I figured, you know what, I want more still. I like to have a decent stills library. So I'll put another big clickable stills library on Volume 2 as well.
I'm curious to see those last 4 episodes when Cummings left the show. I'm curious to see how that works.
Very interesting episodes. I have all the scripts. In fact, funnily enough, Jack Mulaney, who was the second banana in the show,
right, Peter,
his estate vanished. I work with SAG on a lot of things in terms of trying to find things, and it took me about 2 years to track down Jack Mulaney's estate because Jack was known to be a pack rat. He kept a lot of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And I was hoping that in his pack rat style, he may have kept some of the 16s.
Right.
And unfortunately, no such luck. But what happened was when I found the estate, there'd been a lot of money held in trust for them at SAG, and I said, "Here, take your money." It's one of those strange phone calls. I'm sure they must have thought, well, this guy's a scam artist. He's out of his mind. Hey, there's a whole bunch of money for you at SAG. Let me help you get it. And they said, well, what do you want? I said, I don't want anything unless you got anything from My Living Doll. That's all I need. And they said, well, okay. So they got a tremendous, nice big check from SAG, and they said, well, we don't have any of the films, but can we send you something? So it was very dear. They sent me a little box that used to sit on his desk from his house.
Ah, okay.
Which I treasure. It's got a little American flag on it. It's wonderful, and it's something of his, which I think is just great to have. And then he bound all of his scripts, and they sent me all of his personal My Living Doll scripts with all the notes and stuff in there.
Oh, wow.
And that's great. And the thing that's interesting about that is he did the same thing for Julie. That's how Julie had all her scripts. Was Jack Mullaney, out of love of Julie, had them all bound for her, and that's how she ended up keeping them all.
Reproductions of that would be a great special feature on Volume 2.
That's what I was thinking. What I might actually do at some point in time, well, I don't know if I can probably reveal this here for the first time. There is a My Living Doll comic book in the works.
Really?
Yes. There's a company called Hermes Press that we did the My Favorite Martian comic book through, and we're going to do a brand new My Living Doll, The Continuing Adventures comic book, which takes up the story from 1965 to present day.
Wow.
So basically what the story is that I guess she eventually gets found out and shoved in a box, Indiana Jones style, with the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I don't know if you know the story. The doll was built as a companion for long-range space missions.
Yes, supposed to go to the moon.
Actually, it was to go to Mars.
Oh, Mars.
Enough.
That's right.
You got to keep the Mars thing in there if you got a My Favorite Martian.
Right, of course.
So anyhow, the thing that the comic book takes up the story from the perspective of a young engineer who ends up at the Space Center, and he finds out about this mysterious file from the 1960s.
Ah, okay.
And then at that point, he goes to the warehouse, cracks open the box, and Rhoda steps out, and it's Julie Newmar from 1965.
Wow.
And it's the continuing adventures of the doll.
It's funny you brought up Indiana Jones, because you're like the Indiana Jones of this show.
And the funny thing is, in the process of finding My Living Doll, I've actually found a bunch of lost Sherlock pilots.
Oh, wow, okay.
I found a pilot from 1959 called The Reluctant Eye with Bobby Van, where he plays a young man who's coerced into becoming a private eye by his dead uncle, who says, if you succeed at this, you get to keep $1 million.
Okay, sounds interesting.
And I found another pilot with Paul Dooley, Jan Schutan, and an absolutely insane performance by Alan Reed.
Wow.
Who, of course, is the voice of Fred Flintstone.
Sure, yeah.
Anyhow, the second pilot is called Man in the Square Suit, and it's in glorious Metro color, and it looks absolutely amazing, and strangely enough, it uses cues from My Living Doll.
Well,
and because George hated doing rock and roll. He was not a rock and roll guy.
Oh, okay, I see. So the rock cues from My Living Doll he reused for this.
The rock and roll cue from My Living Doll, which he was coerced into, and he didn't want to do, is on the pilot of the Man in the Square Suit.
Wow, these are hopefully be more special features, I would assume.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Precisely. It's like you read my mind. Yes, that's exactly what I do.
Well, listen, Pete.
Just don't forget we have Season 3 of My Favorite Martian coming up now.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, My Favorite Martian, of course. It sounds like the shows are in very good hands, and I want to thank you again for coming on and talking about this, Peter. It has been...
You're very, very welcome. By the way, there's a model kit out of the Uncle Martin spaceship from Pegasus Hobbies.
Oh, okay.
And, our production designer, James Halsey, is still with us. He's the same guy who designed the sets for My Living Doll.
Oh, wow.
And we worked with him for about 6 months, and we did the model kit. So that's out now, and you can go out and grab Uncle Martin's ship if you want it.
I would suggest for their next item a Rhoda Miller model.
Funny you should mention that. It's on the drawing boards right now.
Oh, wow. Unbelievable.
Here's the thing about everything that I do is produced with a fan's perspective. As a fan of classic television, as a fan of science fiction, I do everything in such a way as if I was going to go buy it myself. So that means that it has to be absolutely and completely accurate, and it has to be produced so it's not going to break the bank.
Well, just as long as it's got those beauty marks on the model's back.
Oh, look at the accuracy of my model kit Uncle Martin ship, and then you'll know that they're going to be there, and you'll be able to press them, of course. Of course,
Peter. Before I let you go here, where can people catch up with what you're doing, and catch up with the Chertoff estate?
Well, I do a lot of posting on a thing called Sitcoms Online. I always give little tidbits on there. And, if they want to see me on Facebook, it's Peter J. Greenwood, if they want to friend me, if they're so keen. And I do post stuff on Facebook as well.
All right.
So, it's as simple as if anybody wants to find me, they can ask me questions, and I'm delighted to answer them.
Well, that's how we hooked this up. And thanks again, Peter, for appearing on the show. And keep up the great work. And best of luck in your search for more.
And we'll hopefully find it soon.
Hopefully. All right. Thanks so much, Peter. So long.
So long.